Energy independence is a popular term for locking down cheap energy that won't fund governments hostile to the United States. Politicians pay lip service to energy independence while promising to fund alternatives or push for domestic exploration. But energy independence is a pipe dream, according to Robert Bryce, author of the new book Gusher of Lies, The Dangerous Delusions of Energy Independence. He spoke at the Cato Institute March 18, 2008. This is a segment of a longer event available at cato.org.
Simply stated, energy independence is hogwash. It is neither doable nor desirable. The idea that the U.S., the world's single biggest energy consumer, can be independent of the world's single biggest business, the energy business, $5 trillion a year, is ludicrous on its face. And we are being insulted by our political leaders every time they tell us we should be energy independent. We are interdependent in everything, from iPods to fresh flowers, from sneakers to beer, from bottled water to cell phones, you name it. It's a global economy, and it is becoming more global every day. And the idea that we as the single biggest consumer will divorce ourselves from this industry is crazy. So I wrote this book because I was disgusted. A lot of my writing I do because I'm mad. I also have too many opinions to keep them all to myself. Which maybe is a character flaw, but nevertheless, I felt that it was absolutely essential, given the political environment today, to write a book that looks at the reality of our energy situation. And as I said, it made me mad because I think this idea that when it comes to energy independence, we're being lied to. And we're being lied to on an almost daily basis. And why is that important? Well, that's a problem, as I see it, because we have growing disenchantment with our political process. And if we can't trust our politicians to discuss in an open and honest way the single most important commodity in our economy, what can we trust them on? Now, I know, we can all say, well, that's just politics. Well, I think this is different. And I think if we cannot have an open and honest discussion about energy, it's hopeless to have an open and honest discussion about almost any other topic in American politics. My second point, why is energy independence? Why is this idea so appealing to so many people? I think there are four things. One is the second Iraq War. Second, peak oil. Third, global warming. And four, terrorism. I could add a fifth one, and just briefly, tangentially, it's that scientific illiteracy and innumeracy. Briefly, people just flat don't understand science, and they don't understand the scope of the business that we're discussing. What's 80 billion barrels a year? It's a lot. Does anyone really have a handle on that? I think a lot of people say, oh, well, we can do wind and solar, we can do whatever, and replace all that. Well, we can't. But I think that that's a part and parcel of the innumeracy in the population. But let me go back to the four main points. The second Iraq War, peak oil, global warming, and terrorism, I think are all combined, especially in the last few years, to create a kind of a free-floating anxiety among the voters in this country. Then that free-floating anxiety, I think, is, it contributes to this idea of people wanting to find something that they can believe in. And in the first few pages of the book, I quote James Carville, the Democratic strategist. In October of 2006, he put out a memo to Democratic candidates. And in the memo, he's talking about, obviously, the November of 2006 elections, which were very important. And here's the quote from his memo. He said, Democrats need to talk about the change they will bring, starting with major efforts to achieve energy independence. He goes on saying, and I'm quoting again, research shows that a candidate that says he or she will go to Washington and change things there and will work together with both parties to do major things to move the country toward energy independence has a powerful impact on the vote. It is the one issue that gives people hope. I think that says it. It is the one issue that gives people hope. You have all these fears that are kind of this free-floating anxiety. Iraq, people are discussing, $3 trillion is the latest estimate of the war. Peak oil, oh, are we running out of oil? Global warming, Al Gore says, cataclysm is just around the corner. Terrorism, we hear about that nearly every day. Carville says this is one issue that gives people hope. So if politicians can find a two-word phrase that gives people hope, they are going to use it, and they have. Thus, in last December, Congress passed the Energy Independence and Security Act of 2007. President Bush talks about energy independence all the time. Hillary Clinton, Barack Obama, John McCain talk about energy independence all the time. All of them are saying it's just around the corner. Mike Huckabee, before he dropped out, said he could achieve energy independence in 10 years. Is it realistic, though, to achieve energy independence? I have a bunch of footnotes in my book. I'm not bragging or complaining, 850 or so. I counted them. Let me give you a few statistics that can, I think, maybe give you a few ideas as to whether energy independence is realistic. First, and this is one of the figures that I found that really shocked me when I found it, and I double-checked it, triple-checked it. The U.S. was a net crude oil importer in 1913. 8 years after Henry Ford started selling the Model T, the U.S. was a net crude oil importer. In the roughly 100 years that have passed since 1913, the U.S. has been a net crude oil exporter only a handful of years. In fact, we were a net crude oil importer during much of World War II. Politicians, second. Politicians obsess about the issue of Persian Gulf oil. Oh, we're going to be cut off. The Saudis this, the Kuwaitis that. We hate the Arabs. That's the rhetoric that we hear all the time. The facts are that in 2005, the U.S. imported 11% of its entire oil needs from the Persian Gulf. In 2005, we imported crude oil from 41 countries, we imported gasoline from 46, and jet fuel from 26. If there's a more global market than the crude oil and oil products market, I can't tell you what it is. Let's talk about nuclear power. Nuclear now provides 20% of America's electricity. America imports over 80% of the uranium needed to fire its nuclear reactors. Let's talk about biofuels. Even if the U.S. converted all of the corn grown in this country into ethanol, it would only provide about 6% of the oil needs of this country. Okay, what about biodiesel? A lot of interest in biodiesel. And before I go on, I have to say, I love Willie Nelson. You know, recently he started marketing Bio Willie, a new diesel branded by Willie Nelson. And I love Willie. I love all his pot-smoking friends back in Austin. But the idea that biodiesel is going to solve our diesel needs is pure foolishness. Let me give you the numbers. U.S. consumes about 43 billion gallons of diesel fuel per year. Farmers can produce about 40 bushels of soybeans per acre. That converts into about 60 gallons of biodiesel. To replace all of the diesel fuel burned in America on an annual basis, the U.S. would have to plant 716 million acres just in soybeans. That's 1.6 times all of the cropland now under cultivation in this country. Put another way, even if all of the 3.2 billion bushels or so that are produced of soybeans that are produced every year in this country and were converted into biodiesel, it would only equal about 1.5% of America's total oil needs.
Robert Bryce is author of the new book, Gusher of Lies, The Dangerous Delusions of Energy Independence. The full event is available at Cato.org.